Yo, what up? Welcome to Free Refills Podcast, where we come together as youth leaders to discuss the realities of leading in youth ministry. Our hope is that you leave refilled, refueled, and re-energized to lead in youth ministry. I'm your host, Boss, coming to you from Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dusty.
What's up?
Coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Each episode, we have a special guest join us in our conversation, and today we have Steve Cullum. Steve, welcome to the show.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for having me.
Steve, before we jump into the conversation, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're located, tell us about your family, and how long you've been in youth ministry.
Sure. So I am currently in Longmont, Colorado at LifeBridge Christian Church. I'm the student pastor there, so leading middle school and high school ministries and family ministry alongside that. And I've been ministry for a long time now. I got started pretty much volunteer wise and internships and things like that right around 2001, 2002, but in full-time ministry, getting, a career paycheck or whatever, I guess from it ever since 2007. It's been a little bit, and did ministry, grew up in Illinois, Southern Illinois. I went to Lincoln Christian University for my undergrad and my seminary degree, and then went out to New England in the Boston suburbs of Southern New Hampshire to do ministry out there for 10 years. And then just over 3 years ago, God brought me to Colorado, and I have a wife, no kids. But my wife and I love partnering in ministry, and it's been an awesome ride.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we're grateful and we're thankful that you're on with us today and you're taking time out of your schedule to be with us. Dusty's got a few questions for you, non-ministry related. I guess everything's ministry related. So here we go.
Okay, the way we look at it definitely can be ministry related. Hey, we asked the same question. What is your, being Free Refills? What's your favorite drink, like your go-to drink? Can't be water, and let's be a little crazy. Let's stop there. Can't be water. What do you go to?
Can't be water. Oh man. So I'm trying to stop right now, so I'm actually given this I've given soda up for a while, but my go-to is a Mountain Dew Livewire.
Oh, really?
As I like the orange. It's great. So
nice. I noticed it's soda, not pop to you.
Right.
That's good.
Right.
It's good to know. Good to know. Don't want to cross those lines.
Yes.
What are you reading right now?
Oh man, I'm reading a lot, and I need to finish these books. One of the big things, the one that I'm most excited about right now, I've been reading Francis Chan's Letters to the Church.
Yeah.
And just really loving it right now. And it's definitely one of those that I've taken a break from it only because I need to sit in it just for a bit and realize what he just talked about before I continue reading, and just soak it up a little bit more.
Yeah, no, it's good. Okay. So I did my research, obviously, saw you some stuff that you do on Instagram. So everyone that's listening should go follow him. Good content, but Mandalorian, you're a fan.
Yeah.
You're a fan, and you're one of those people that you don't wait for the whole season, that you'll struggle through a whole week, which is tomorrow, right? Because today's a Thursday. So you're counting down the hours. Mandalorian, what has been your best part, without trying to give a spoiler in case somebody is that person, your best part that you have loved the most about the Mandalorian?
Ooh, best part. Okay. So without spoilers, I will say that I really like how I feel like Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have been able to recapture the original heart of the original trilogy. I think they went back to that space Western drama thing that you get a lot of action, but there's also some really cool storyline that is going on in episode 2 of season 2. Without any spoilers, I feel like a lot of people talked about it being like a filler kind of episode, which it could be pursued as that, but I really like the family dynamic that was kind of going through the whole episode and stuff. So there's this action, but there's some really cool storyline that's been able to be told to the whole thing too.
That's really good. We had Josh Griffin on a while back, who we all know is a Star Wars guru. Would you consider yourself a more Star Wars guru than Josh Griffin?
Absolutely not. No, I don't know if there's anyone I know actually, like I was going to say in the ministry world, but maybe just outside the ministry world as well, that is as much of a guru as Josh is.
Well, I don't know if you heard that episode, but we like quizzed him and he did pretty well. But hey, before we jump into like the conversation, we were just kind of talking with our communications team about this topic and who comes to our mind, and your name came up, like Boss had said. And we just kind of wanted, because of the topic, we kind of wanted to read you on the spot some words that were said about you behind your back. So here you go. You ready? These are good. Gratitude, humble, genuine, learner, consistency and longevity, and gracious. And these are what was said about you. And this is what led us to be like, we got to ask him if he can be on. So it's always good to hear those things, because we know sometimes in youth ministry, there's some other stuff said behind our back that's not that. So we wanted to refill you there as far as letting you know that this is what your peers in the youth ministry world are saying.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That's so much better than me reading mean tweets about myself or something.
There you go.
That is a lot better.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool to hear. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
no problem.
Of course. Well, we thought it was a perfect segue, or even just a perfect thing to put in and say on air, because this is the month of. Traditionally, it's the month of gratitude and thankfulness, as we will pause later in the month and celebrate Thanksgiving in our country, whereas other people, they do something different. But for us, we talk about thankfulness, and so we wanted to jump on this topic with you, and it seemed perfect to discuss that with you. So we're talking about thankfulness, we're talking about gratitude, but we're talking about leading with a heart of thankfulness and gratitude, and how that impacts us, how that impacts our volunteers, how that impacts our family, how that impacts our complete outlook of just ministry and life each and every day. So Steve, when you hear a heart of thankfulness or a heart of thanksgiving, what does that like trigger in you? What sort of things brew up in you at that moment?
Yeah, I think the big things that come to mind are two big items. One, just the idea that I am called to this ministry. It's nothing that I have done on my own. I get the amazing privilege of trying to live a life that gets to lead teenagers and their families to Jesus. And God has allowed me to be able to pursue that as a career, and to impact other people. Like, I'm so grateful and so thankful that I get to wake up every morning and do this as a job. That's incredible. I mean, I think the way God has wired me, I'd be doing it no matter what. But the fact that He's allowed me to do this as a job is amazing. And I think, secondly, I think early on in ministry, I realized that there's no way that I could really accomplish God's calling on my life on my own. That I have to have other people around me. So I think, like, maybe I can always do a better job at it, but something I regularly try to do is to thank the people around me. So I'm so grateful that God gave me a wife that loves partnering in ministry with me, that He has given me a team of people, of volunteers that love doing ministry, and we get to do it together. And that He also allows me to connect with National Network and stuff like that, to connect with other youth workers in our area that love doing ministry, and we can do this together. And so just realizing that we are all in this together, and just being thankful for the people that we get to partner together with.
It's good. When you think of thankfulness and that heart of gratitude, and, I just feel like, I have other questions, like some loaded questions later. So we'll put that in case someone's thinking about turning it off right now. But like, softball question, I feel like, would be, how do you feel? Because I feel like sometimes I do the same thing. I love what you're saying about, like, just saying thank you, like just constantly making sure that that's like the first thing, like, right. Like that thanks is kind of always on our lips with not just God and our relationship with him, but like just the people that we get to lead with and the people that are alongside of us. And like, whether that's our leaders or our senior pastors or staff or the secretary or the person like cleaning the toilets, like, it doesn't matter what that is. It's like, what do we do that now? This is something I struggle with, and so maybe you can kind of help me with, is, do you ever feel like when you're that thankful and you're always saying stuff like that, that you feel like your genuineness is sometimes like taken into account, that you feel like maybe people don't think that you're genuine because you just say it all the time? Like, do you ever feel that way?
I think I probably did early on. Because I knew that I was supposed to be doing that. I knew I was supposed to be encouraging my team and things like that. And I think early on I did struggle with that, but I think over time I've realized that, like, I think it's also how you say it. That, like, let the genuineness just like come out of me. That it's not just a, hey, thanks for what you're doing. It's a, like, I see this and I see how God is using you in this, and make it a little more personal. It goes a lot longer, more, in their lives, and really touches their lives a little more, and they realize that it's actually genuine. And I think as well, just like what I've found myself doing a lot more is when we pray with my team, that I'm thanking God for them in front of them as well. That it's not just thanking them personally, but it's also like they hear me pouring out to God and saying, thank you so much for surrounding me with this team as well.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah. Steve, this is something that it's almost like a learned behavior of, getting into that place where we're continually, I guess, even working at being grateful and being thankful, because there's so much noise, so many things that you could turn to quickly and be like, I'm not grateful for that. I'm not grateful for this. And we sink ourselves. So is there a pivotal moment for you in your journey that you had where you were like, this was the moment that things started to change and I started to see something, or maybe people around you started to see you were actually practicing this heart of gratitude?
Yeah. I don't know. I do know it's been something that I've grown in. I'm not sure if there was this pivotal moment or if it's just in the gradual steps along the way. I will say that I think I have a natural thankful attitude that God has given me, but an area that I have struggled with and I've tried to grow in is in the area of encouragement. Because I have not always been vocal or showed that encouragement. And I think if they go hand in hand, that can actually, to your point, Dusty, I think that allows that to be even more genuine. And so someone that's helped me a lot is actually my wife. She's an incredible encourager, and she just naturally does it all the time. So I'm constantly learning from her. And I think she also keeps me in check sometimes and says, hey, like, what are we going to do for our volunteers? How are we going to show them that we're encouraging them? Because she does hear me say that a lot of times, but like, how we're going to show them that. And so I've been learning from her. I think probably the thing that I think back to, and I don't know, like I said, when this happened in my ministry, but I think when I started seeing our volunteers and the other people on our team making an impact, like a direct impact on the lives of teenagers, I think that's when I started realizing how much they mean to the ministry. Because I knew what God had called me to, but when all of a sudden I started seeing what God had called them to, I think that started changing my mindset as well. And I started realizing how much time I need to spend more with like the leaders versus the teenagers themselves. And that sort of thing started happening.
Yeah. So how did that then change your ministry and maybe even the culture of the ministry?
Yeah, I think for the most part, it changed how I approach ministry. as a youth pastor, that my approach is not to go and hang out with teenagers as much anymore, which is hard because
Sure.
I love doing that. And
Right.
and so I think what it did was it got me to focus more on the leaders. And I still focus on students, but I find myself more with those potential leaders in our youth group, starting a leadership team and stuff like that. I'm not leading a regular small group, within our youth group on a regular basis, things like that, because I'm spending more time with our small group leaders and recruiting and things like that. So I found myself spending more time with adults because of
Yeah.
that.
And I think that's so interesting because I think when you said that, like, I don't hang out with students as much, there's some people who are going like, I'm done. Like, this guy has no idea the youth ministry. How is he in youth ministry? Because, like, here's the thing is, and this is something I'm learning, just background, like I do NNYM, and I'm also like a local youth pastor and run networks and stuff like that. But like what I'm realizing is that I'm learning from students who have told me, I don't invite kids to church or to Wednesday night or to our midweek or whatever that is.
Mhm.
I invite them to my small group. And what that taught me, what made me really, really start thinking was, if I'm not filling those small group leaders, if I'm not making them want to show up, and not like they're like begrudgingly going, ugh, it's a Wednesday night, but if they are excited to be there and I'm making sure I'm taking care of them, those kids that are inviting friends because they love their small group leader. And I
Yeah.
think that that's really hard. And I don't know if that's because maybe our thankfulness is low for them because we think I got this. Or there's sometimes that guilt I think that some people have of going, I'm the one that's paid for this. Like, I don't get to like do that. So I have to take most of the weight. But when you think like that, like I think that's a nugget that we all can take away to just goes like, hey, one, if you're hearing this and that's what you're doing, hey, great job. Like, keep going. Like, if it's not, ask yourself why, right? Like, take some time, take a month of just like, hey, look, it's thankful month, right? Like, take a month just to be thankful and show over gratitude to your leaders. That's so good. So one of my loaded questions, here we go, transition.
Okay.
When I think about gratitude and counting your blessings and just being thankful for where you're at, we kind of had a conversation about this, was when you're that way, you're never kind of looking over at the next thing. You're never looking for your exit door. Like, at least that's why I see it. Like, if you're constantly thankful for where you're at, you're never looking for your exit, or you're never looking for the better thing. And how has that been something like in your life with your ministry that you find, like, have you struggled with that? Like, and I see it in youth workers or youth pastors all the time who are kind of like, man, I just think I need this, and they're kind of missing their thankfulness. So how could you speak into that a little bit?
Yeah. I think number one, I've had some amazing mentors in that area that have just modeled it for me. I think from some of my grandparents that have they volunteered in ministry. I'm the first like paid ministry worker in my family, but I had grandparents that volunteered no matter what, and they stayed true to their church even through some really difficult times. And so I had that in my background. I had a youth pastor that actually passed away last year, and he was quite young. But he had been in ministry at my home church for 30 years. And so I had that in my mind. I had another mentor from my internship who had been in his church for, I think, 12 years before he moved on to teach in a Bible college. And so I had some longevity examples in my life that said, this is how it's done. And this is what can happen when you stick in it for the long haul. I think also, like, I feel like there are different people that go into youth ministry for different reasons. But I think if you're like me, who understands like this is God's calling on my life, like I'm not I don't foresee God moving me onto a different ministry at some point. I don't have a desire in my bones to ever be a lead pastor. Like God has called me to work with teenagers and their families. And when I have that kind of mindset, it's allowed me to kind of stay comfortable. I mean, it's not comfortable, but you know what I mean? Like where I am and be content where I am. But as well, like I know that it takes time. God has placed me in places where I couldn't make the impact that he wants me to make if I were to be moving around all the time. I was in my last ministry, like I said, for 10 years and I had no actual desire to move. Like my wife had always wanted to live in Colorado, but it was one of those things that are like, it's probably never going to happen, and that's okay. It's just kind of one of those desires. And then all of a sudden God showed up, and it was because of him pointing us in this direction that we are here where we are. If he didn't show up, I'd still be in New Hampshire, still be working at that church, still be pouring into those students there. And I think like for me, like I have to follow God's calling in that, and not, my own desires.
Yeah.
I'll say something that I feel like when I hear what I just heard, and I want to help our listeners catch this, is that your contentment is not your comfortability. I think comfortability can be a place where we don't want God to move us, right? And we become stubborn in a little bit, but our contentment is through blessing, and it's through thankfulness and gratitude, because we are content with what we have. We don't need, everyone's always loves the grass is greener on the other side comment. But it's, we've always also said the grass is greener where you water it, which is through your thankfulness and your gratitude, and you're taking care of it. And I tell some people, some of these youth pastors, I say, listen, the grass is greener on the other side because you're not in it yet. And then maybe it's going to die when you get there because it was never meant for you because you're not taking care of what you have now. Yeah. My mom always would tell me, like, I'm like, Mom, I want a 2-story house. She's like, you don't clean a 1-story house. Why would I give you a 2-story house? I'm like, good point. But I think that contentment, and like I love how you made the point that you allowed God in your contentment of being thankful for what he had given you already to steer you to a heart's desire. And I think that that's really interesting, is that he knows our heart's desires. He knew that was a desire of your wife. And through your contentment and loving where you're at, he was like, let me show you, let me bless you through that. And so I also, just think that it's really important to remind ourselves that even like through the Bible, we don't see God moving somebody. Like we see people stepping out on their own and what happens, and we see people who are led through him into the next steps. And so I want to say thank you for that. Thank you for that. I hope that's what they took, because I heard that, and if not, they needed to hear that. So good on you.
Yeah, thanks.
When there have been times where you have, maybe not when, but has there been times where you've noticed in yourself, like you've let go of that heart, you've let go of that thankfulness, that gratefulness, where you've been like, maybe it's just a season of time? And if so, if that time happened, what was it then snapped you back out of it? How did you get back out of that space?
Yeah. There definitely been times. And I think it's every time that comes to mind are times that I've taken my eye off the fact that I have a team surrounding me. When I have tried to take on the world myself, and put myself in the place of Jesus, and put myself in the place of like, I am the youth pastor for this town. Sure. And I'm for whatever reason, God's called me to reach the thousands of teenagers in this community. And instantly like that's a little bit of there's some pride in that. And so that has to be addressed. And all of a sudden, like I realize almost instantly I get overwhelmed. And I start realizing that there's no way that I can do this on my own. Like, and I feel defeated, and I feel like, that there's no end in sight. And I definitely, I kind of get, it's an overwhelming feeling. And what it's typically brought me back, it's usually, a lot of times it's been a conversation with someone, a trusted friend friend in ministry, my wife, a mentor who has just pointed those things out to me and like, metaphorically slapped me across the face and say, Steve, you realize what's going on, and gets me back on the path. And then sometimes it's just being in tune with the Holy Spirit, and letting him, point those things out to me. Those are a little better. If I realize that the Holy Spirit is trying to tell me that stuff before my friend or my mentor does, because it does come a little harder when they're slapping me across the face saying, Steve, come on, I know you're better than this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's never good if you're choosing not to listen to like the Holy Spirit, and all of a sudden like the Holy Spirit says to you, okay, you're not going to listen. I'll have your wife say it. And you're like, well, that's what I'll take you every time. Right. Cause when my wife says it, it's not as soft, I feel like. Right. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Well, even Jesus calls the Holy Spirit the comforter. So, sometimes, we need to listen to him, the comforter, more than, the friend or the mentor or sometimes the spouse, because it's not going to be as comforting sometimes for them.
Sure. Yeah.
And it can cause us to be more defensive to them when we should have, and then that even hurts your relationship. So that's really good. When you, I think you kind of like, I touched on it a little bit, but like, how has this heart, like, and how have you seen this? Like, is there a specific story that you can maybe just like pull to tell of like how like your heart of gratitude, your heart of thankfulness has benefited you in your leadership role, or like somebody it's impacted directly?
Yeah, I think I do. I thought of a story actually, when Boss asked earlier, like, was there a pivotal moment? And this wasn't necessarily a pivotal moment, but it was one of those stories that all of a sudden the light bulb went off brighter than it ever did in my life around this. And it was a graduation service, back when we could actually have those. Right. And went to the graduation ceremony, and I think it was beforehand. So we were walking over, and it was like outdoors at the football field, and we were walking over to the football field, and one of our high school girls, it's like off in the distance. And like, as I think back, I picture it like this movie sort of thing. And like, they're like running in slow motion, and there's like this high and waves and everything. And my wife and I were walking up, and I was like, oh, that's cool. We got a student that's excited to see us. That's really awesome. And it was a few years into my last ministry. It was like, okay, we've kind of arrived. This is cool. They're pumped. They're not embarrassed to see us in public, and all that stuff. And we were like smiling and getting closer and everything. And all of a sudden she runs right by us, and we're like, well, that stinks. Okay. And I turn my head, and she goes running into the arms of her small group leader. And in that moment, I went on this gigantic emotional roller coaster in a moment. And I I went from, oh, they're so cool, this is exciting to see me. And then, oh, that's disappointing. Yep. But oh my gosh, that's so much better. Like that small group leader has made an impact on their life so much that not only like are they excited to see them in public, but they're running into their arms and hug them and like start talking instantly. And that was a moment where I realized, Steve, it's not about me. It's not about anything that I've done. It's about being in a place where God has allowed me to put some pieces together for real ministry to happen. And the cool thing is that, when God does call me to Colorado from New Hampshire, that I knew that ministry is going to keep on going, and that ministry is still going to thrive, even though I'm not there, because it wasn't about me in the first place.
That's good. So you've spent time talking about mentors. You talked about your wife. You've talked about just your own personal journey of diving into scripture and things like that, and how this has all played and culminated in a way of showing itself in a heart of thanksgiving. What would you say, because you've spent time several years with us on the NNYM team, leading networks in your area, what have been some things that you've said, maybe you've sensed from other leaders as they are on the opposite side of the spectrum, and they're possibly that day, that week, that season, whatever, and you're just sensing like you're you don't see the things you should be grateful for and thankful for. How do you talk to them? What are some things you've said? Because I imagine there are people that are listening right now. There's a lot going on and a lot that we can be not grateful for right now, and we can be discouraged. So what would you say, and what have you said to people in that season of time?
That's a good question. I don't know if I've ever consciously thought about that before. So I apologize if I'm not very polished in this area because
That's all good.
yeah, I don't know if I've really ever considered what that is. And I think those are moments that it's definitely been the Holy Spirit working through me, because I've never
Sure.
like pulled someone. I don't think I've ever really consciously like pulled someone aside and said, this is an area you need to focus on.
Mm.
I think my natural inclination in those situations has always been to try to model it for them, to make sure that they're thankful as well. That they sense that I'm thankful for them as well. But yeah, a couple times that I can think about has always been kind of, asking them questions about their ministry, asking them, how are you pulling off these things? What does your ministry look like? And kind of getting them to the point where they realize they're not doing this on their own. And I never had that time, and maybe at some point in the future where God is going to allow me to kind of just speak directly into it and call someone out. But it's been more of those, like, I'll go and visit their ministry and see what they're doing, and then even model it for them and saying, wow, you got an amazing team here. This is what I saw. And just modeling it and showing them, maybe pointing out some things that they haven't been able to see themselves, has been probably the way that I have been going about.
That's
Dude,
good.
okay.
That's really cool.
So I think what's so good is it goes back to also another great leadership trait of yours that I'm hearing that maybe you're not saying out loud, but it's like, it is basically, instead of giving them the answers, you're just like, hey, let me ask you like really good questions to where you'll find the answer, which is, I think, what we should all be doing, because, going back to when I was a teacher, like I could give my kid an answer, but they're not going to ever apply that, or it's never going to go longer, but it's always going to go longer when they get there themselves. And, what I love hearing is that it's so often, I think, whether it's all of us, maybe you're superhuman in this area, but like all of us sometimes lose focus of what we do have. And I think that the comparison trap is that I follow almost every single youth group in my area. Because I want to like tell them like, that's amazing. I want them to hear like how great that is. And because they might not have that, right? Like someone telling them that. And so like, I think what I'm hearing too, and what I'm learning in this moment with this episode, is that like our gratitude and thankfulness with one another kills comparison, because then it's just like, I don't have to feel like I put this event on to stump or outdo or overdo somebody else on the street, that because that person's saying like, man, that was awesome. And then it reminds us like, oh, well, thank you. And there's just like it's a different feel. And I think that that's really important. And I love to hear how you go to like other people's ministries and tell them how good that is. Cause that reminds them to go like, hey, you came in here for me. And that's important. In our area, we just started doing pastor swaps. We can't move our whole youth group, but we can move each other. And so our people in our network are just switching pastors. So youth pastors are just going to their different buildings and teaching practically the same thing, same topic, or whatever they needed, that youth group needed. And last night I got to do that at a group. And you know what? It's so cool to hear this, because I didn't even notice it until just now. Like all those students, they had an amazing worship, like youth worship band, which is our like unicorns, right? Like, and I was sitting there and I had to go up and remind these students, like, you guys have an amazing opportunity to worship God with an amazing student like leadership team. And like, and that youth, and like it was that moment of just like helping model other people on how thankful that is. And so thank you for like bringing that, like that's something like I can take from here and I can grow and remember like why we do this. And so that's so good. That's so good.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Steve, what is something, as we start to kind of wrap up, what's something that you would say to somebody right now of like, this is your encouragement to them to help them get closer to this space and get into this mindset, this heart set, and possibly also speak to the benefit that you've experienced in your life because of that?
Yeah. I think probably two things come to my mind. I think one, a lot of people have talked about it for years. I feel like things like thankfulness journals. If you don't naturally think about those things and what you're thankful for, try to do it on a regular basis. Just start writing down the blessings that God has given you, the people that you're thankful for, the situations that you're thankful for, all those different things. Just list them out and just sit in that for a while and just rest in the fact that God has given us so many blessings. I think that's one. So just, we have to acknowledge that. And if it doesn't come natural, we need to force ourselves to sit in that and rest in what God has given us. But I think as well, I think practically speaking, it was a few years ago, I was at a conference, I think it was probably Orange Conference, that I heard someone talk about just looking at all of the things that we do as a youth worker, listing out all the jobs, that sort of thing, and then start maybe checking them off one by one. How many of those can we pass on to someone else?
Yeah.
How many of those have to be done by us because of whatever reasons, maybe specific giftings and callings and timing and all those different things. But how many of these can we start handing off to other people and start training them and helping them to thrive in those areas? And I think once we start thinking with that kind of mindset, we start realizing it's not about us and we have to have these other people. And then God will bless that. And then we'll start to reach more and more teenagers than we ever could on our own.
Sure. Yeah, that's solid. Last question for you. How has this impacted your marriage? What has this done for the two of you and what you've seen and experienced? Because there's people listening, they're married and they're going, and we care about NNYM. We care about things that are even outside of your ministry role, because that's really where life is like, can be taken and all that sort of stuff. You get it. So how has this impacted your marriage and transformed that?
I I am even more grateful. I think I alluded to this earlier too, just about how grateful that I am that God gave me someone that I get to partner with in ministry. I love the fact that she gets it in so many ways. And so it's impacted our lives in the way that we get to keep the conversations going at home, and we get to talk about these students and pray for students together and pray for our leaders together. And it's impacted, like she has different giftings and things that I don't have. And so like the encouragement side of things, where like that comes so natural to her. So a lot of times I'll think, okay, we got to do something, but what do we do? And she can actually take it and run with it and bless our leaders like even more than I'd ever be able to. So yeah, it's been really good. On the other side, there's this, I don't know, shadow side of that though, in a marriage that is so connected in ministry that there's times that I've noticed that I've brought home the negative sides of things too much. And so I've had to watch that. It's been pointed out in my life, and I've had to make sure that I still guard her from that, so that she never feels any tension between her and the church as well, and that sort of thing. But on the positive side, I mean, it's been so great to just have that partnership and everything that's come from that. God continues to show me every day like something new that I can be grateful for having a wife that loves doing student ministry alongside me. And I know some people don't have that, and it's not necessarily something that is needed, but when it's there, speaking from someone that is in that space, it's sweet.
Right. Absolutely. I completely agree. My wife is in, she and I have both been in student ministry together on the same team, at the same church. We've done that. We've had to put up those boundaries as well, but also just, it's always a constant reminder, for me to be grateful for her. And, even in the times where it's been rough and been tough, because you talk about the junk that comes with being in ministry. So yeah, this is awesome. Steve, thank you. Thank you so much for your time to be able to sit with us and share, just all of these really cool things. I've been blessed by it. So thank you.
Well, my pleasure.
So before we go, Steve, how can people connect with you?
Yeah. So I am pretty much at Steve Cullum. That's SteveCullum on most of the major social medias out there. So that's probably the easiest way. But I have a podcast as well called the Student Ministry Podcast. You can I think it's easier actually just to search my name on podcast stuff, but you can go to the studentministrypodcast.com. I've got a blog, and I have some fingers on a bunch of different things that have kind of happened over the years. But if you follow my social media, that's probably the easiest way to connect with all that.
Sweet. Awesome. We'll drop all that stuff in the show notes so that everybody can find it. But again, thanks, Steve.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So that time with Steve was awesome. That was a really encouraging conversation to hear him express the way that he has postured himself and the way that he has, he's worked and continues to work, and allow God to work in his heart to set himself up so that he has a heart of thanksgiving. Scripture talks about this. And if maybe there's something you were listening to and you're a little confused about what a heart of thanksgiving is, and Dusty explained it, I think at one point really well, that a heart of thanksgiving is one that doesn't need anymore, that says, I have enough. That's what we're trying to do here. That's what we do when we sit at the table and we celebrate Thanksgiving. We look at all the things that are on our table, all the people that are around it, no matter how many or how little, we say, thank you. And it's really important during this season that we name those things that we're thankful for, that we express our gratitude to God for the things that he has given us and the things that he's blessed us with. It's really easy to get discouraged and lose sight of that. I know that I can speak for myself only in this, that I can be critical. I can look at all the things that I don't have. I can look at the things that other people have, and I can wish that I had them. And that is something that will, the evil one will get a foothold on us, and that will permeate into other parts of our relationships, if we don't allow God to work in it, and if we don't hand it over, and we stop and just be grateful for the things we do have. My invitation to you today, as you're listening to this, is that at some point this week, you make a list. You write out the things that you're grateful for, or maybe just the things that you have. Because I believe that when you see that list, you're going to be overwhelmed, and you're going to see just how much you have and how much you have been blessed with. And if nothing else, just thank God for the breath that he's allowed you to have today. And as another invitation, take this time to thank the people that are around you, for the volunteers, the staff that you work with, maybe just family members, anybody in your life. Call them, text them, email them, whatever form of communication you want to use, and reach out and just say thank you. Nothing in return. Just say thank you. I believe that that will move us into a place of gratitude, and that will continue. I've said it once before, but this will permeate into the relationships we have, and it will counteract all of the times where we feel that we need something. I believe that we as leaders can move into that, and we can demonstrate that for people that are around us. And when we do that, we make this world a better place. We make this place more palatable for people. I believe that that will also allow us to be healthier, if I can put it just plainly. And we won't have as many things in our life that we see as negatives, and we see them as positives. And when the negatives do hit, because I'm not trying to diminish any of that, when the negatives do hit, we'll be able to take it a little bit easier, because we will still see the things that we're grateful for. I hope and I pray that this time has been refreshing to you. I hope that and pray that this time was not something that you feel bogged down by, or it's another thing that you have to do in order to be a quote unquote good leader. We care about you. We care about your health. We care about that you are refilled and refueled, and you're replenished when you listen to these conversations that we have. If that's you and you are needing something more, maybe you're left with, I don't know how to do this, or I've tried and I'm discouraged, reach out to us. Hit us up on Instagram, email us, contact us in any form. We'll drop all that stuff in the show notes so you can contact us. We'd love to sit with you and listen. We might just be able to relate and just validate some of the things you're feeling. But most importantly, here's the deal. We as leaders, we have to pour into ourselves. We have to replenish. We have to find spaces that we can replenish our souls and allow God to fill us with joy, because we're giving so much. And I know that in this season, I've been feeling it too. I'm worn out. I'm tired. So take a break. It's going to be worth it. This is a long haul. This isn't a sprint. And we need you to be in the game for a long time. We're with you. You're not alone. And we're better together. Until next time, blessings. Peace.